Hello everyone, welcome to week 2 of the class. This is the first of the week screencasts. The other one, of course, will be the Wednesday one. This is the Monday one. And the reading to start off the week is a short chapter, and I even cut it down shorter. Just the first 3 full pages of deductive arguments in Weston's A Rule Book for Arguments, and then a little bit of the top of the 4th page. There are just a few deductive arguments you need to really think about for this course. And let's go down some notes here so make sure we cover everything. There it is. Okay, context. And if you remember from the useful terms page, and I'm going to take you there right now just to help you refresh your memory. Context, kind of a really important word for this class. And you'll see that context is the audience, location, situation, or a cultured shared understanding of common sense. So keep that definition handy all the way through the class. So, audience. The joke is an argument. How does the structure show it and make appeals to emotion, credibility, and especially logic? And I've got those also right here on the useful terms page. The appeals. In other words, something the joke teller is able to create in the minds of the audience. If it gets a laugh, it covers the appeals to emotion. There's the pathos. That's the easy one for what we do in this class anyway. Now, this is a little more subtle. When the joke teller establishes an understanding in the minds of the audience that he or she means no offense and is there to entertain, there's an appeal to credibility. And again, that one's right there. And I give you some examples. Joe Coy begins his show talking about the diversity of the people in the audience. And in that first couple of sentences, he makes it clear he's there to entertain and they're all going to have a good time. So basically, he's, in so many words, he's saying, don't be offended. Long as you laugh, we've sealed the deal here. We have an agreement. I'll entertain you. You won't be offended because we're just having fun. Paul Rodriguez does that a little bit. He has to get through his first couple of jokes before you see him doing that, where he's talking about Mexican funerals. Means Mexican American funerals. He's an LA guy. And he's kind of situating himself with his own culture. He has a mixed audience of Latinos and people from other groups, Anglos, Asians, and so on. And he's got to get that out there, that he doesn't want to offend anybody. He's there to entertain them. So he does it in the first few minutes. And Margaret Cho does something similar. She starts with her own community like Paul Rodriguez. Jeff Foxworthy is kind of doing something like that, except he's talking about other people, which he is not, rednecks. And Dave Chappelle's, of course, is satire. It's a spoof of a news show. And you'll see that it takes a little bit to get that across. Maybe the first couple of minutes we can figure out that it's comedy and that it's not there to offend anybody. So let's look a little bit deeper into deductive arguments and Weston's A Rule Book for Arguments. And this is the appeal to logic part, because we know what the appeal to emotion is. We know what the appeal to credibility is. Now, how does the logic work? Well, that's where arguments come in some ways. And this is important. It comes in two parts, logos. It has a deductive structure. Not all jokes do, but the ones we're going to look at do for this week, that you will look at and find in one of the 5 comedians' work. There'll be an appeal to logic if it's got a deductive structure. If it's got a premise, usually more than one, and a punchline, it's got a deductive structure. And then, of course, the punchline is illogical. There's an actual logical conclusion that's not a punchline, doesn't get a laugh, but it makes it work as a plain deduction. But it's been replaced by the punchline, so it can get a laugh. It's a joke, after all. The other part of the logic is usually what is being made to look foolish. It's the job of the illogical conclusion. That is the punchline. It's making fun of something. And that is the beginning of some kind of argument about whatever the subject of the joke was. And you'll see that the P and Q's I mean here are on Weston's schematic, if you will, for the way he lines up deductions. P stands for premise. Q, for some silly reason, stands for conclusion. Don't ask me why. Okay, so the punchline, the illogical conclusion. All you have to do is find it. Once you find that, you got the laugh, you got the illogical conclusion, the punchline, then you can go backwards to find the setup line and the premise. And pay attention, Weston's descriptions show 2 premises. In a joke, the final premise works like a setup line, just before the punchline, in other words. So now, here's some ways to figure out what kind of deduction structure the joke has. If it goes on what happens, premise 1, premise 2, whatever number of premises, and a punchline, it's a modus ponens, the first type of deduction Weston discusses in the chapter. If it goes on what does not happen, it's a modus tollens deduction. It kind of, if you remember math from junior high school, whatever, plus numbers, minus numbers, 2 minuses equal a positive, and those kinds of things. Think about it this way, that if you have a premise that says something does not happen, and a conclusion that says, therefore, something does not happen, it's one of these. It's a modus tollens. And the third one you have to think about in the chapter is the hypothetical syllogism. Remember, this is an important word. It's hypothetical. It's something that could happen, but it hasn't happened. Not yet known to happen. So let's go for an example. What kind of deductive structure does this joke have? A man comes into a small country inn to book a room for the night. While he is signing the guest register and getting his room key, he notices a dog sitting a few feet away. He asks, "Does your dog bite?" The innkeeper says no. The guest puts out his hand to pet the dog, but the dog bites it. The guest says, "I thought you said your dog does not bite." The innkeeper says, "That's not my dog." So do a little detective work. Start with the punchline. Notice there's a negative there. There. And there. I'll leave it to you to figure out what kind of deduction that is. Okay, assignments coming due Tuesday. Let's bop on over to the assignments page. If you remember from last week, that comic argument analysis, the 2 paragraphs, is coming due Tuesday. And coming Wednesday, of course, is your first discussion posting for the week's class discussion. And reading questions Tuesday night. And oh, by the way, an extra credit question, 1 of 3 for the class. Each one's worth 10 points. If you get them all right, you'd pick up 30 points of extra credit. So it will basically take a deductive approach, and you're just going to have to spot the parts that make it deductive. It's pretty self-explanatory, and you have an hour to answer it, as long as you get it done by the time it needs to be done, which is Friday, I believe. So you got a couple of days. Just don't open the quiz, because once you open it, you're committed. Watch. See, don't click take the quiz till you're ready to start, just like the reading questions. It's on a timer. Okay, that's it for the first part of the week. My Wednesday screencast will cover a little bit more of our next reading from Critchley's book, a lot about humor and context and the cultural connections of humor, and also some pretty important assignments that are coming up. Okay? Have a great week, at least until Wednesday, and I'll talk to you again.